Okay, let's look at this characteristics of life worksheet. It is 6 pages long, just at the beginning. It's got 32 questions, I think. Yep. So I don't expect you to get this finished in 10 minutes. It may take you a couple of days, that's fine. I'm going to post these videos and they'll be cut into sections. I'm not going to go through the whole worksheet in one video. So you don't have to worry about watching, a 45-minute video. I'm going to have them cut down and I'm going to have them titled based on what I'm talking about in that video, which part of the worksheet I'm going over. So if you only have a question, if you just get really confused on number 15, and that's under the reproduction section, then you can find the video reproduction and watch that. So, but if you get stuck on any of these and the video doesn't help, let me know and I'll help you out. So, you can put your name if you want to, but you don't have to. I'm not going to. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Most people feel confident that they could distinguish a living thing from a non-living thing, but sometimes it's not so easy. Scientists have argued for centuries over the basic characteristics that separate life from non-life. Some of these arguments are still unresolved. Despite these arguments, there do seem to be some generally accepted characteristics common to all living things. Anything that possesses all of these characteristics of life is known as an organism. So, that's pretty much the gist of our notes. When we started with the characteristics of life notes, that was the big thing, was you can have some of these characteristics and not be alive, but to be alive, you have to have all of those characteristics. So number 1, the scientific term for a living thing is a blank. Hit enter. It's going to give you another number at the start. Just hit enter again and it'll go away. So the scientific term for a living thing is an organism. And that is straight from the reading. Okay. Now moving on to contain one or more cells. Scientists know that all living things are organized. The smallest unit of organization of a living thing is the cell. A cell is a collection of living matter enclosed by a barrier known as the plasma membrane that separates it from its surroundings. Cells can perform all the functions we associate with life. Cells are organized and contain specialized parts that perform particular functions. Cells are very different from each other. A single cell by itself can form an entire living organism. Organisms consisting of only a single cell are called unicellular. A bacterium or a protist like amoebas and paramecia are unicellular. Multicellular organisms contain hundreds, thousands, even trillions of cells. Multicellular organisms may have their cells organized into tissues, organs, and systems. Whether it is unicellular or multicellular, all structures and functions of an organism come together to form an orderly living system. Functional cells are not found in non-living matter. Structures that contain dead cells or pieces of cells are considered dead. For example, wood or cork cut from a tree made up of largely cell walls. The cells themselves are no longer functional. So, that's talking just real quickly about cells. If you have one cell, if you have a million cells, whatever it takes for you to be alive, you are considered alive. So a bacterium would have one cell, it's just a unicellular organism. Humans, we have trillions of cells, so we are considered a multicellular living organism. And then, of course, if you're bigger, like more complicated, like humans are way more complicated than bacteria. We are multicellular. We have a bunch of different cells, whereas bacteria has one. So our cells are even more organized. They're organized into tissues, organs, and organ systems. So we're going to talk about that quite a bit whenever we diagnose this girl with some sort of weird illness she has later on in this chapter. And then lastly, it says here that functional cells are not found in non-living matter. So if you're non-living, you don't have cells. You never did have cells. You never will have cells. You're made up of something different. If you have cells in you, but they're not working anymore, you're considered dead. So you are still a biotic factor. You're still a living part of that ecosystem. You just are not alive. So you are dead. So you're a dead biotic factor. So wood or cork that's cut from trees, they're going to be made up of cell walls, and that's it. They're not going to have all the stuff that's inside of cells making it function because they're dead now. So number 2, all living things are blank. It says at the top, all living things are organized. Number 3, what is the simplest level at which life may exist? Well, we just talked about it all through this section here. That is the cell. Number 4, are all cells alike? You don't even have to go back to the reading. Just think about it. Are all people alike? Are all animals alike? Are all plants alike? No. So that means all cells are not alike either. Number 5, all cells perform various jobs, or that would be functions. Number 6, what surrounds a cell and separates it from its environment? Talks about that up here, and it talks about the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. We'll talk about that later in this chapter. Or cell membrane. However you say it's fine. I usually say plasma membrane, but either way, same thing. Number 7, what is the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms? Just look at the prefixes. Unicellular, if you're on a unicycle, you're riding something that has one wheel. So a unicellular organism has one cell. A multicellular organism, if you have something that is multicolored, there's more than one color there. So there's more than one cell for a multicellular organism. Number 8, give an example of a multicellular organism and an example of a unicellular organism. There are some listed up here for the unicellular examples. You can put some of those, or you can just think from the top of your head, or you can Google those. However, I'm going to say multicellular. Mine is going to be a shark. Unicellular, I will say bacteria. Bacterium. Number 9, and yours don't have to be the same as mine. Number 8, it's whatever you can think of, as long as you put for multicellular a multicellular organism, and for unicellular a unicellular organism, you're good. Number 9, multicellular organisms can be organized into what other levels? Talks about that up here at the end here. We are organized into tissues, organs, and organ systems. And we will talk about that shortly in this chapter. Number 10, which of the following would only show cell walls or show only cell walls? So these are things that are considered dead. So, and it tells you actually in this last paragraph here. So it says wood or cork cut from a tree. They're no longer functional. The cells are no longer functional, but they're there. So it's just going to be the cell wall, just like the hollow part is all you're going to see. So cork, I'm going to go here and highlight that. I'm going to highlight it blue. Sponge, that is a living thing. So it's not, it doesn't say it's a sponge removed from its habitat or anything like that. So I'm going to assume that that's alive. Wood though, yeah. I'm going to use purple. Plastic, no, that's not made from, that doesn't have cells. So that's not going to be right. It's actually made up of something different, some other kind of molecules or some other kind of particles that we'll talk about later on this year. We mentioned them last year. We'll talk more about them this year. Tree, it doesn't say anything about it being dead. It says it is the tree. I'm going to assume it's alive. So the only options would be cork and wood.